next guest is best known for his 4-year stint on Hollywood Squares and as the head writer for the Academy Awards. The documentary Get Bruce shows why some of Hollywood's biggest stars turn to him when they need a little funny line. Take a look.
With each of these people, it's kind of like how do you build a costume for somebody?
He has a great sense of who people are. He can give you something that will be spot on.
I'm very grateful for that because it makes me look much smarter than I am.
There's no writing, there's only rewriting.
He's given more great lines to celebrities than a Hollywood coke dealer.
Please welcome Bruce Vilanch. Chicago,
hello.
Welcome, because you've lived here before.
Yes, but not in Elmwood Park.
Our neighbor of the day. Yeah, you were an entertainment reporter.
I lived in Old Town. Yeah, I was a hippie in Old Town. I kept the hair. It's a lighter color now, but yeah, I worked for the Chicago Tribune. I worked for a paper called Chicago Today. Some of you may remember.
Oh, wow.
Some of the older brides in this crowd may remember. And then it became Chicago. It became part of the Trib, and I was at the Trib for years.
And that's where you met Bette Midler?
I met Bette Midler, yeah, at a club called Mr. Kelly's.
Yeah.
Also,
I've heard about Mr. Kelly's.
It was a big nightclub. It was like a hot place, jazz, comedy, and all the great, from Lenny Bruce to Carmen McRae and Sarah. Everybody worked there. And Bette was there. She was an opening act for a guy named Jackie Vernon, who was a deadpan comic, who used to say things like, "When I was a child, I was unwanted. Now I'm wanted in 13 states." And she was his opening act. And a friend of mine called and said, "Go see her." And I went, and I was knocked out. And I interviewed her for the Trib. And the next day she called and she said, "That was very funny. That you're a funny writer." I said, "Well, you're funny. You should talk more." She said, "You got any lines?"
Really?
And
so
we started. I started immediately writing Dick Daley jokes because he was the mayor then. Daley the Elder. Again, for the older people here, there was another Daley who was the mayor years before. So and I've been writing for her for 42 years, which is difficult because she's only 36.
Yeah. Right, exactly. It's got to be the greatest feeling when you write for all these comics like Billy Crystal, Roseanne Barr, and they actually get up there during the Oscars and they deliver it, they nail it, and everybody laughs.
It's fabulous. And then, of course, they get up there and nobody laughs, and it's kind of like, you're on the Hindenburg. Even older reference. Yeah.
Well, James Franco proved that to be true, right?
Yeah, I know, yeah. He was, he's a sweet guy, but he's really kind of too cool for school. He wasn't there. He just
wasn't. That was the one we did with Anne Hathaway?
Yes.
Yeah, and of course, Anne's a precision instrument, Anne Hathaway, and he made her look like some kind of robot doll that you couldn't turn off. And it's unfair because she's really, really good. And they just, they didn't mesh. It was a mistake. It was an epic fail.
So when you're backstage or wherever you are watching it, after you've rehearsed and sent a dozen thousand emails back and forth, and you're seeing the bomb, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I'm getting into the Bronco and going on the 405. I'm heading for Mexico. Can I please have a newer reference? I'm so sorry.
Anytime you can throw a Bronco reference in there, you can't go wrong.
All right. It's early, and I was trying, I'll come up with a Rahm Emanuel reference in a minute.
Hey, Bruce, what was it like having Billy Crystal back?
Terrific. He's the master of it. He's done it. I think this was his 8th or 9th time, and so you're in good hands. And all the things that we invented with Billy, the medley and inserting him into all the movies and all that stuff, hadn't been done in a long time. So it was good to have him back.
I got to ask you, I know you've heard the president's stand finally took a stand last.
And as a lesbian, I'm very happy. I can now marry Chaz Bono.
You are obviously a proud gay man. You're an advocate for gay and lesbian rights.
No, a gay woman.
Okay, you're
either one.
What do you need?
The question is,
I'm like a pizza place. What topping you want on that? I'll handle it.
Bruce, were you happy to see the president come forward, a sitting president have a stand?
I was delighted. The sitting president has a stand.
Right?
I was delighted. First of all, I think you have to remember that this is a guy who's been aware all of his life that his parents could not get married in many places. And so he comes from that background. I think this is something that he's always been in favor of. But politically, it was inexpedient for him to take a stand. I'm glad that he's finally realized that the world has evolved to the point where he can actually do that. I mean, he hasn't evolved. The world has evolved, and he's just taking notice of that. And I also think it's important that people realize that gay marriage doesn't come out of an idea that we all had, when we got off the mothership, that we should all get white dresses and have fabulous weddings. Gay marriage came from the AIDS epidemic, because if you had a long-term partner who got sick, you went to the hospital and you were not allowed to see him because you were not legally tied to him. A family, in many cases, a family that had rejected him, was not interested in him, was now delivered to him as his caretakers. You had no say in a person who you would live with maybe 25 years.
Right.
That's what this movement is born of. It's born of people having their basic rights denied in the most basic, seminal way. The death of a loved one, the sickness of a loved one. And it's characterized by the right wing as a frivolous, anti-religious thing, but it is a deeply human thing. And that's the impetus for it. So to see, and we've come to the point now where, in my opinion, the only thing that stands between full equality for people like me is religious bigotry. It's people who will not let go of stuff that they were taught as children, even when they look at the world around them and realize that they are not living in the Judean hills anymore, that it is a different world.
Very well said. I mean, I felt what you were saying. I literally felt that.
I think people don't realize that this stuff is human. It comes from human emotion and human need. It's not somebody abstractly saying, let's make a political grab, or let's try and redefine marriage.
Right.
I don't want to redefine marriage. You don't want to redefine civil union. I mean, divorce redefines marriage. But,
Hello.
I mean,
Hello. Been there, done that.
Exactly.
So tell me why you're in town. You're in town for Scrooge and Marley.
I'm in town. I'm making a movie. I'm making a picture called Scrooge and Marley, which is a Christmas Carol with a little gay twist.
And you're shooting
the ghost of Christmas, the
future and present.
The ghost of Christmas future.
Are they all going to be?
They're fabulous. They're incredible.
And you're shooting that here.
We're shooting it here. We're shooting it all over town. And I play. If you know A Christmas Carol, Fezziwig was the accountant that Scrooge Scrooged. And in our case, of course, he's the owner of a fabulous disco, and in the 70s. And Scrooge gets to go back and see all the things he did wrong during the 70s, the hedonistic period.
Yeah.
So it's you've never seen A Christmas Carol quite like this. It's very positive and it's very Christmassy because it's goodwill towards men, baby.
All right. Bruce Vilanch, everybody. Make sure to keep an eye out for Scrooge and Marley. It's going to be in theaters later this year. We'll be right back, everybody.
Bruce,
thank you. Sorry, I always get very carried away.
A little later, Page and